The sun was setting over New Haven when Park first noticed something wrong. He stood on the watchtower at the edge of the settlement, looking out at the golden fields of wheat that stretched toward the distant mountains. New Haven was a quiet place. It was a farming colony on a moon far from Earth, home to about 12,000 people who wanted a simple life among the stars. Was the security chief here? It was not a difficult job. The biggest problems he faced were usually broken fences or lost children wandering too far from home. He had served in the military back on Earth, but those days felt like a distant memory now. Here, life was peaceful. But tonight, something felt different. He looked up at the sky. The stars were coming out one by one, bright and beautiful, but there was something else up there too. Small lights that moved in ways stars should not move. Pulled out his communication device and called the sensor station. "Are you seeing anything strange on the scanners?" There was a pause. Then a young woman's voice came through, sounding confused. "Sir, I am picking up some readings, but they do not match anything in our database. Maybe it is just space debris." Watched the lights grow brighter. His stomach felt cold. After 20 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now his instincts were screaming at him. "Sound the alarm," he said. "Get everyone to the shelters now." "Sir, are you sure? It might be nothing." "Do it now." The alarm began to wail across New Haven. People stopped what they were doing and looked up in confusion. Children playing in the streets froze. Farmers in the fields turned toward the settlement with worried faces. Ran down from the watchtower and into the streets. He grabbed people and pushed them toward the underground shelters. "Move, everyone move, get underground." Some people listened. Others stood frozen, staring at the sky. The lights were clearly visible now. They were ships, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, leaving trails of fire behind them. Dr. Shin was in her small laboratory when the alarm started. She was a botanist who studied the local plants, trying to find new ways to grow food. She was 32 years old, with kind eyes and dirt under her fingernails from working in the soil all day. When she heard the alarm, she immediately thought of the children. The settlement school was just 2 buildings away. She ran outside and saw the ships in the sky. For a moment she could not move. The ships were unlike anything she had ever seen. They were shaped like crescents, dark and smooth, with no visible windows or weapons. They moved in perfect formation, silent and terrible. Then the first explosion hit. A beam of light shot down from the lead ship and struck the center of New Haven. The community hall disappeared in a ball of fire. The shockwave knocked to the ground. She heard screaming. She heard more explosions. She tasted blood in her mouth. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up and move." She forced herself to her feet and ran toward the school. Children were pouring out of the building, crying and calling for their parents. Teachers tried to guide them, but everyone was panicking. "This way," shouted. "Follow me to the shelter." She gathered as many children as she could, 7 of them, then 12, then 20. She held the hand of a little girl who was crying for her mother and led them through the burning streets. Behind her, the settlement was dying. Houses collapsed. People fell. The aliens did not seem to care who they hit. They were not looking for anything specific. They were simply destroying everything. Near the main gate, Sergeant Minu was trying to organize the evacuation shuttles. He was a big man with a face and steady hands. He had served with back on Earth, and he was one of the few people in New Haven with real combat experience. "Get the shuttles ready," he shouted at the pilots. "We need to get people off this moon." 3 shuttles were warming up on the landing pad. They could hold maybe 300 people each. It was not enough, not nearly enough. People were running toward the shuttles now. Families with children, old people who could barely walk. Everyone was desperate to escape. Minu saw soldiers landing near the gate. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue light. They moved without hesitation, shooting anyone in their path. Minyu raised his rifle. It was an old weapon designed for hunting, not war, but it was all he had. "Hold the line," he shouted to the few guards who stood with him. "Give the shuttles time to launch." They fought. They fought harder than anyone could have expected from a group of farmers and security guards. Minyu killed 3 soldiers before one of their shots hit him in the chest. He fell to his knees, blood pouring from the wound, but he did not stop. He raised his rifle again and fired. Another fell. Behind him, the first shuttle lifted off, then the second. Minyu smiled. He thought of his daughter back on Earth. He thought of the family he would never see again. Then he pulled the trigger one last time. The third shuttle rose into the sky, just as Minyu fell for the final time. In the underground shelter held the children close. The ground shook with each explosion. Dust fell from the ceiling. Some of the children were crying. Others were too scared to make any sound at all. "It will be okay," whispered, even though she did not believe it. "We will be okay." She heard footsteps above them, heavy footsteps, alien footsteps. She held her breath and pulled the children deeper into the darkness. The footsteps passed. The aliens did not find them. For hours they waited in the dark. The explosions eventually stopped. The screaming eventually stopped. Everything became silent. When finally opened the shelter door, she saw only ashes. New Haven was gone. The buildings were rubble. The fields were burning. Bodies lay everywhere, twisted and still. She walked through the ruins with the children following behind her. 23 of them had survived. 23 out of more than 2,000 who had lived in New Haven. She found near the watchtower. He was badly hurt, with burns covering half his body, but he was alive. He had hidden under a collapsed building when the bombing started. "They are gone," he said, his voice rough with pain and smoke. "They just left." Why asked, "Why did they do this?" Shook his head. He had no answer. Above them, the ships were already disappearing into space. To them, this was nothing important, just a small human settlement that had been in their way. They did not expect any consequences. Humanity was young and weak. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. They were no threat. High Overseer, the commander of the fleet, did not even bother to file a detailed report. He simply marked the location as cleared and moved on to his next target. He did not know that a small rescue shuttle was racing toward open space, carrying 847 survivors. He did not know that a child had recorded everything on her personal device. He did not know that his actions had just woken something that should have been left sleeping. The ashes of New Haven cooled in the silence, but somewhere among the stars, a fire was beginning to burn. The rescue shuttle drifted through the darkness of space for 6 days. Inside, 847 survivors huddled together in the cold. The shuttle was designed to hold 200 people at most. Now it was packed with nearly 4 times that number. There was not enough food, not enough water, not enough air filters. People took turns breathing near the vents. Children slept in shifts, sharing the few blankets they had. The wounded lay on the floor, tended by those who had any medical knowledge at all. Shin moved through the crowded shuttle, checking on everyone she could reach. She had no medical training, but she had steady hands and a calm voice. That was enough for now. "How are you feeling?" she asked an old man who was sitting against the wall. "I have been better," he said with a weak smile. "But I am alive, that is something." Nodded and moved on. She found lying in a corner, his burns wrapped in torn cloth. He was unconscious, his breathing shallow and uneven. She knelt beside him and changed his bandages as gently as she could. "You have to survive," she whispered to him. "We all need you to survive." On the 3rd day, the water ran out. On the 4th day, 3 elderly passengers died. On the 5th day, the air started to taste thin and stale. But on the 6th day, something appeared on their sensors. "Ship approaching," the pilot announced, his voice hoarse from dehydration. "It is human military vessel." A wave of relief swept through the shuttle. People cried, people laughed. Some did both at the same time. The ship that found them was the UES Indomitable, a patrol frigate that had been investigating strange sensor readings in the area. Lieutenant was the first to board the rescue shuttle. She was a young officer, only 28 years old, with sharp eyes and a professional manner. She had seen difficult things in her 5 years of service, but nothing had prepared her for what she found on that shuttle. The smell hit her first, then the sight of so many people packed together, thin and pale and desperate. She saw children with hollow eyes. She saw wounded people lying on the floor without proper care. She saw the faces of survivors who had lost everything. "Medical teams now," she said into her communicator, keeping her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. "All available personnel. We have mass casualties." As her crew began helping the survivors onto the Indomitable, a young girl approached. She was maybe 10 years old, with dirty clothes and tangled hair. She held out a small device. "I recorded it," the girl said quietly. "Everything that happened. I thought someone should see." Took the device and looked at the girl. "What is your name?" "My name is—" "Thank you, you did the right thing." That night watched the recording alone in her quarters. It was almost an hour long. It showed everything. The ships descending from the sky, the first explosions, people running and screaming, bodies falling, buildings burning. It showed Sergeant Minyu making his last stand at the gate. It showed Dr. Shin gathering children and leading them to safety. It showed the alien soldiers walking through the streets, shooting anyone they found. When the recording ended, sat in silence for a long time. Then she wrote a message to Earth Command and attached the file. The message was simple: New Haven colony destroyed by unknown alien force. 11,153 confirmed dead. 847 survivors recovered. Video evidence attached. Request immediate instructions. The message traveled at faster-than-light speed. It reached Earth in less than an hour. Admiral received it at 3 in the morning. He was 62 years old, a veteran of the Mars Uprising and the Belt conflicts. He had seen war. He had given orders that sent young men and women to their deaths. He thought he had grown used to tragedy. But when he watched the recording from New Haven, something inside him changed. He watched families torn apart. He watched a sergeant die defending people he barely knew. He watched a botanist hold frightened children while the world burned around her. He watched a little girl's hands shake as she recorded the destruction of everything she had ever known. When it was over, Admiral turned off the screen and sat in the darkness of his office. His hands were folded in his lap. His face was like stone. Then he reached for his communicator and made a call. "This is Admiral. I am calling an emergency session of the Defense Council. All members are to report immediately. We have a situation." Within 2 hours, the council was assembled. 20 of the most powerful military and political leaders in human history sat around a long table, watching the same recording that Admiral had seen. No one spoke while it played. Some looked away during the worst parts. Others forced themselves to watch every moment. When it ended, the room was silent. "Who did this?" asked General, commander of the Strategic Fleet. Her voice was quiet but hard. "Our intelligence believes it was the Dominion," said Admiral. "They control a large section of space near the region. They have never made contact with us before. It seems they decided our settlement was in their territory." "They killed 11,000 people over territory?" asked one of the civilian leaders, his voice filled with disbelief. "They killed 11,000 people because they thought they could," Admiral said. They looked at humanity and saw a weak, young species that had only been traveling the stars for 30 years. They saw easy prey. The room fell silent again. "What are our options?" asked General. Admiral stood and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of the city stretched to the horizon. 8 billion people lived on Earth. 12 billion more lived in colonies across the solar system and beyond. All of them would soon learn what had happened to New Haven. "We have 3 options," he said. "We can do nothing and hope this was an isolated incident. We can try to negotiate with thee and seek some kind of diplomatic solution. Or we can show them what happens when someone attacks our people." "Diplomacy seems," one of the politicians began. "They did not give us a warning," Admiral interrupted. "They did not make demands. They did not ask us to leave. They simply came and killed everyone they could find. Does that sound like a government that wants to negotiate?" No one answered. Admiral turned to face the council. His eyes were cold. 30 years ago, when we first ventured beyond our solar system, we knew we might find hostile life. We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war. We built weapons that we hoped we would never have to use. We trained soldiers for battles we prayed would never come. We created plans for enemies we wished did not exist. He walked back to the table and placed his hands flat on its surface. "It is time to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. It is time to activate Protocol Ember." The council voted unanimously in favor. Within hours, the recording from New Haven was broadcast across all human space. Every colony, every station, every ship received it. People watched in horror. People watched in fury. People watched and remembered every face, every name, every life that had been taken. And across human civilization, a single message was transmitted on military channels. "They touched our people. Show them what that means." In hospitals and training camps, soldiers who had never seen real combat began preparing for war. In shipyards and factories, weapons that had been sleeping for decades were brought back to life. In hidden bases throughout the galaxy, secret fleets began to wake. The Dominion had won their small battle against New Haven. They had marked it as a successful territorial acquisition and moved on without a second thought. They had no idea that they had just started a war they could not possibly win. They had no idea that humanity had been waiting for this moment. They had no idea what was coming. But soon, very soon, they would learn. For 30 years, humanity had shown the galaxy a friendly face. Human traders visited alien stations with smiles and fair deals. Human diplomats attended galactic meetings with offers of friendship. Human explorers traveled to new worlds with open hands and peaceful intentions. The galaxy looked at humanity and saw a young species, idealistic, hopeful, perhaps even naive. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 decades ago. They were like children taking their first steps into a dangerous universe. What the galaxy did not see was what lay beneath the surface. Humanity remembered its own history. They remembered the wars that had killed millions. They remembered the empires that had risen and fallen in blood. They remembered the simple truth that every human child learned: the universe does not care about the weak. So while they smiled and traded and explored, they also prepared. General stood on the bridge of her command ship, the UES Titan, and watched as her fleet emerged from hiding. For 20 years she had commanded the Leviathan fleet. It was humanity's greatest secret. More than 2,000 warships, hidden in asteroid fields in the shadows of gas giants, in deep space where no one ever looked. They had trained in silence. They had waited in darkness. They had prepared for a day that many hoped would never come. Now that day was here. "All ships reporting ready, General," her aide announced. "The fleet is at full strength." Nodded slowly. She was 55 years old, a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She did not look like someone who commanded enough firepower to destroy entire worlds, but appearances could be deceiving. "Signal all captains," she said. "We move in 6 hours." Across human space, similar scenes were unfolding. On Titan Station, the largest manufacturing center in the outer solar system, Chief Engineer was bringing weapons back to life. He walked through vast underground chambers filled with machines that had been sleeping for years, the size of buildings, missile systems that could track targets across millions of kilometers, drone factories that could produce thousands of attack units in a single day. "How long to full production?" asked the military officer who had accompanied him. Checked his tablet. "For the ammunition, about 72 hours. For the antimatter warheads, maybe a week. The drones are already being produced. We should have the first million ready in 3 days." The officer looked at him with wide eyes. 1 million drones in 3 days. Allowed himself a small smile. "We have been preparing for this for a long time. We just hoped we would never have to use any of it." He did not tell the officer about the other weapons, the ones that were classified so highly that only a handful of people knew they existed, the ones that humanity had built and then locked away, praying they would never be needed. Those weapons were being unlocked now too. In a secure intelligence center on Earth, Dr. Han was working around the clock to understand their enemy. She was an expert in alien languages and communications. For the past week, she had been analyzing every piece of data that human spies had been able to gather over the years. "What have you found?" asked Admiral, who had come to check on her progress. Looked up from her screen. She had dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. "The Dominion controls 47 star systems. They have conquered 12 different species over the past 1,000 years. They are arrogant, aggressive, and completely convinced that they are the most powerful civilization in this part of the galaxy." "And what do they think of humanity?" Pulled up a translated document. This is from their military database. It classifies humanity as a minimal threat, suitable for territorial absorption. "They believe we are too young and too weak to resist them. They think the attack on New Haven will scare us into submission." Admiral read the document in silence. When he finished, his expression had not changed. "Do they know about our military capabilities?" "No, sir. Our deception has been successful. They think our entire fleet consists of about 200 light patrol vessels. They have no idea about the Leviathan fleet or any of our heavier weapons." Admiral nodded. "Good. Let us keep it that way until the very last moment." Meanwhile, Park was recovering in a military hospital. He had been badly burned in the attack on New Haven. The doctors had spent days treating his injuries. His skin was still covered in bandages, and he could barely move without pain. But his eyes were clear, and his mind was focused on one thing. "I want to join the assault force," he told the officer who came to debrief him. The officer looked at his medical chart. "Captain Park, with respect, you are in no condition to fight. Your injuries—" "I watched my friends die," interrupted. "I watched children burn. I hid under rubble while aliens walked through our streets killing everyone they could find." He sat up, wincing at the pain. "I am going to look the beings who did this in the eyes. You can either give me a place in the assault force, or I will find my own way there." The officer was quiet for a moment, then he nodded slowly. "I will see what I can do." Across the galaxy, the Dominion continued their normal operations, unaware of what was coming. High Overseer, the commander who had ordered the attack on New Haven, was already planning his next conquest. He sat in his quarters aboard his flagship, the Eternal Blade, reviewing reports from his subordinates. "The human territory has been marked as cleared," one of his officers reported. "We have detected no response from their government. They appear to have accepted the loss." Made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 arms. "Of course they did. They are primitives. They know they cannot challenge us." "Should we proceed with the next phase of expansion?" "Yes, There are 3 more human settlements in the region. We will clear them next month." The officer bowed and left. Turned to look out his window at the stars. He had been a military commander for over 100 years. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed rebellions. He had never known defeat. Humans were just another weak species that would be absorbed into the Dominion. In a few generations, no one would even remember they had existed. He did not notice the tiny probe that was watching his ship from a safe distance. He did not know that every word he had just spoken had been recorded and transmitted to human intelligence. He did not know that his next destination was already known. And he did not know that 2,000 human warships were moving silently through the void, carrying enough weapons to burn his entire civilization to ashes. The Leviathan fleet traveled in darkness, running silent to avoid detection. Each ship carried crews who had trained for years for exactly this kind of mission. Each crew knew what had happened to New Haven. Each one was ready to fight. General stood on the bridge of the Titan and watched the stars pass by. In 3 days, they would reach space. In 3 days, the war would truly begin. "General," her communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from Admiral." "Put it through." Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. "General, the Council has confirmed your orders. You are authorized to use all necessary force to neutralize the military threat and secure justice for New Haven." "Understood, Admiral. What are the rules of engagement?" "Simple. Any military target is fair game, but we do not kill civilians unless absolutely necessary. We are not like them. We do not murder innocents. Show them that humanity is stronger than they ever imagined, but also show them that we are better than they are." Nodded, "It will be done." The transmission ended, turned to her crew, who were all watching her silently. "You heard the Admiral," she said. "We are going to war, but we are going to fight with honor. We are going to show the galaxy that humanity is a force to be feared, but also a force that knows the difference between justice and revenge." She looked out at the stars ahead of them. "For New Haven," she said quietly. "For New Haven," her crew repeated. And the fleet continued its silent advance toward the unsuspecting enemy. Prime was the heart of military power in the region. It was a large planet with a gray sky and cold winds. Massive shipyards floated in orbit around it. Military bases covered its surface. Over 1,000 warships were stationed there, including the very fleet that had destroyed New Haven. The commanders on Prime were relaxed. They had won an easy victory against the humans. They expected no consequences. Why would there be? Humanity was weak. Humanity was afraid. Humanity would never dare to strike back. They were wrong. Commander stood on the bridge of the UES Vanguard, watching the planet grow larger on his screens. He was 40 years old, a career military officer who had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. Behind him, 300 human warships waited in formation. "All ships confirm ready," his tactical officer reported. "Enemy fleet status. They have not detected us yet. Their ships are scattered across their orbital zone. They are not expecting an attack." Nodded, the element of surprise was humanity's greatest advantage. The thought they were safe. They thought no one would dare challenge them. In a few minutes, they would learn how wrong they were. "Open a channel to the enemy fleet," ordered. "All frequencies. I want them to hear this." "Channel open, sir." Straightened his uniform and looked directly at the camera. His voice was calm and clear. "Forces, I am commander of the United Earth Navy. 3 weeks ago, your fleet attacked a human settlement called New Haven. You killed 11,153 civilians, men, women, and children who had done nothing wrong. You destroyed their homes. You burned their bodies. You thought we would not respond." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We have come to collect." On Prime, alarms began to sound. Commanders scrambled to their stations, shouting orders at confused crews. They had detected the human fleet, but they could not believe what their sensors were telling them. 300 warships. Where had they come from? How was this possible? High Overseer, who was aboard his flagship in orbit, stared at his tactical display with wide eyes. This is impossible. Our intelligence said the humans had only patrol vessels. Where did these ships come from? Sir, their weapon signatures are unlike anything in our database, his tactical officer said, fear creeping into his voice. They are powering weapon systems we have never seen before. Before could respond, the first human ships opened fire. The battle for Prime lasted less than 2 hours. Human-fired tungsten projectiles at a fraction of the speed of light. These simple pieces of metal, accelerated to incredible velocities, hit shields with devastating force. The shields, designed to stop plasma weapons and energy beams, shattered on impact. The first ship to fall was a cruiser that had been too slow to raise its defenses. 3 rounds punched through it from bow to stern. It exploded in silence, scattering debris across the void. Then another ship fell, and another, and another. The commanders had never experienced anything like this. Their tactics were designed for enemies who fought like they did, with energy weapons and coordinated fleet movements. They had no defense against simple metal traveling at impossible speeds. Commander watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Focus fire on their capital ships. Do not let them organize a counterattack. Human fighters swarmed through the formation, small and fast and deadly. They targeted engine systems and weapon arrays, crippling ships that the larger vessels would finish off. Missile salvos followed precise targeting data provided by intelligence officers like Dr. Han, striking command centers and ammunition stores. In the chaos, High Overseer made a decision that would haunt him forever. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Full retreat. We must preserve what ships we can." "Sir, if we retreat, we will lose Prime. If we stay, we will lose everything. Do it." The fleet began to scatter. Ships that could still move turned and fled, abandoning those that were too damaged to escape. It was not an ordered withdrawal. It was a panicked rout. But one ship did not get far. The Eternal Blade's flagship was intercepted by the UES Vengeance before it could reach the jump point. Captain No, commanding the Vengeance, had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Disable their engines," she ordered. "I want that ship intact." The Vengeance's precision strikes cut through the Eternal Blade's propulsion systems. The great flagship drifted to a halt, powerless and alone. "Open a channel to the enemy ship," said. When the connection was established, she spoke clearly. "High Overseer, this is Captain No of the United Earth Navy. Your ship is disabled. Your fleet has fled. You have 2 choices. Surrender and face trial for your crimes against humanity, or be destroyed where you sit." There was a long pause. Then's voice came through, filled with anger and disbelief. "You cannot do this. I am a High Overseer of the Dominion. We are one of the greatest powers in this galaxy. You are just primitives who learned to fly yesterday. You have no right." "You killed 11,000 of our people," interrupted. "Farmers, scientists, children. You murdered them because you thought we were weak. You thought wrong. Now surrender or die. I will not ask again." Another long pause. "I surrender," said finally, his voice hollow. The boarding began within minutes. Park was part of the assault team. His burns had not fully healed. His body still ached with every movement. But he had insisted on being here, and no one had been able to stop him. The inside of the Eternal Blade was dark and smoke-filled. Crew members surrendered quickly, throwing down their weapons and raising their 4 arms in submission. They had never experienced defeat before. They did not know how to handle it. And his squad moved through the corridors, clearing room after room. Finally, they reached the bridge. High Overseer stood in the center of the room, surrounded by human soldiers. He was taller than had expected, with dark gray skin and 4 eyes that burned with humiliated rage. Walked up to him slowly. The other soldiers stepped aside to let him through. "Do you remember New Haven?" asked quietly. Looked down at him with contempt. "It was a minor operation, a small settlement in our way. It meant nothing." "It meant nothing to you," said. "To us, it meant everything. Those were our families, our friends, our children." He stepped closer until he was directly in front of the alien commander. "I was there. I watched my friends die. I smelled the burning bodies. I heard the screams." Said nothing. "You asked us how we have weapons like this," continued. "How we could build a fleet that broke your forces in less than 2 hours. You want to know our secret." He leaned in close. "We have been killing each other for 10,000 years. Every weapon you saw today was designed to destroy other humans. Every tactic we used was perfected in wars against our own kind. We have fought battles that made your little conquest look like a playground fight. We have survived plagues and famines and genocides. We have crawled through mud and blood and fire to reach the stars." Stepped back. "You never stood a chance." Was taken away in restraints, bound for trial on Earth. The battle was over. Prime belonged to humanity. But this was only the beginning. As news of the victory spread across human space, celebrations erupted in colonies and stations everywhere. For the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. The Dominion had attacked, and they had paid the price. Generals stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching reports come in from across the fleet. They had lost only 12 ships. They had lost over 300. "What are our next orders?" her aide asked. Looked at the star map. 47 systems lay ahead of them. 47 worlds that had thought humanity was too weak to fight back. "We continue the advance," she said. "Every system, every base, every ship that does not surrender will be destroyed. We will not stop until the Dominion understands that attacking our people has consequences." She turned to face her crew. "For New Haven," she said. "For New Haven," they answered. And the human fleet moved deeper into enemy space, bringing justice with fire and steel. The Dominion had ruled for 1,000 years. In that time, they had conquered 12 different species. They had built an empire that spanned 47 star systems. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and made entire worlds bow before them. They believed they were the greatest power in their corner of the galaxy. In 3 months, humanity proved them wrong. The campaign was swift and devastating. Human fleets struck military bases with overwhelming force. Shipyards were destroyed. Supply lines were cut. Communications were jammed. The great war machine, which had seemed so unstoppable, began to crumble. Admiral coordinated everything from his command ship, the Earth's Fury. He spent 18-hour days reviewing reports, issuing orders, and making decisions that affected millions of lives. He did not enjoy this work. He found no pleasure in destruction, but he understood that it was necessary. "Status report," he said during one of his daily briefings. General appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. "We have taken 32 systems. Their main fleet has been reduced to approximately 40% of its original strength. Most of their remaining ships are defending the home system." "What about civilian casualties?" "Minimal, sir. We have been careful to target only military installations. The population has largely stayed out of the fighting." Admiral nodded. "Good. I want that to continue. We are not here to commit genocide. We are here to end a threat and secure justice." This was the part that separated humanity from the Dominion had attacked New Haven without warning, killing everyone they could find. They had not cared about civilians. They had not shown mercy. Humanity chose to be different. When human forces captured a world, they did not slaughter the population. They did not burn cities or destroy homes. They simply removed the military presence and moved on. Some of the conquered were confused by this. Others were grateful. A few even began to wonder if the humans were really the monsters their government had said they were. On Prime, of the Dominion, the ruling council met in growing desperation. The council chamber was a grand hall of stone and metal, decorated with the trophies of 1,000 years of conquest. Statues of great warriors lined the walls. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one representing a conquered species. But today the mood was not triumphant, it was terrified. "Our fleet is being destroyed," one counselor said, his voice shaking. "The humans are cutting through our defenses like they are nothing. We have never faced an enemy like this." "We must negotiate," another counselor argued. "We must offer terms before they reach our home system." "We have tried to negotiate," said a third. "We have sent diplomats. The humans ignore them. We have offered tribute. The humans reject it. They do not respond to any of our communications." Elder, the oldest member of the council, rose slowly from his seat. He was nearly 300 years old, his gray skin wrinkled with age, his 4 eyes clouded but still sharp. "Do you know why the humans do not respond?" he asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. "It is because they remember what we did," continued. "We did not negotiate with their settlement. We did not offer terms. We simply killed everyone we could and left. Now they are doing the same to us, but with a crucial difference." He paused. "They are not killing our civilians. They are not burning our homes. They are destroying only our ability to make war. Do you understand what this means?" The counselors looked at each other, uncertain. "It means they are not coming for revenge," said. "They are coming for justice. And that is far more terrifying. A revenge seeker can be negotiated with, can be bribed, can be deceived. But a seeker of justice will not stop until the scales are balanced." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to fight to the last ship. Others wanted to flee and start again somewhere else. Some even suggested surrendering and throwing themselves on humanity's mercy. In the end, they decided to send a delegation to meet the humans directly. Ambassador received the delegation aboard the human flagship. She was 43 years old, a career diplomat who had spent most of her life working toward peaceful relations between species. She had hoped for peace with the. She had written proposals for trade and cultural exchange. None of that mattered now. The delegates entered the conference room nervously. They were high-ranking officials, dressed in elaborate robes and adorned with symbols of their status. But despite their fine clothes, they looked afraid. "We come to discuss terms," the lead delegate said, trying to maintain dignity. "The Dominion wishes to find a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Looked at them calmly. "You want peace now. Where was your desire for peace when your ships attacked New Haven? Where was your diplomacy when your soldiers walked through the streets killing children?" The delegates shifted uncomfortably. "That was a regrettable incident," the lead delegate said. "High Overseer acted without proper authorization. He exceeded his orders. The council did not approve." "Enough," interrupted. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. "Do not insult us with lies. We have captured your records. We know that had full authority. We know that the attack was planned and approved at the highest levels. We know everything." The delegates were silent, stood and walked to the window. Outside, human warships hung in space, their weapons pointed at Prime. The of the Dominion was surrounded. "Here are humanity's terms," she said, turning back to face them. "They are not negotiable. First, unconditional surrender. Your military will stand down immediately and submit to disarmament. Second, dissolution of your offensive capabilities. You will never again possess the power to attack another civilization. Third, reparations. You will pay for the reconstruction of New Haven and provide compensation to every family who lost someone in the attack." She paused. "Fourth, High Overseer will stand trial for crimes against humanity. He will face justice for what he did. This is non-negotiable." The lead delegate swallowed hard. And if we refuse these terms? Looked at him steadily. Then we will continue our advance until there is nothing left of your military. Then we will take what we want anyway. The only difference is how many of your people will die before that happens. The delegates returned to Prime with humanity's terms. The council debated again, but this time the outcome was clear. They had no choice. The alternative was total destruction. Elder spoke the words that ended 1,000 years of dominance. "We accept the terms," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "We surrender." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Dominion, one of the most feared powers in known space, had fallen. And they had fallen to humanity, a species that most civilizations had dismissed as young and weak. On Earth, people celebrated. In the colonies, survivors of New Haven wept with a mixture of grief and relief. The beings who had destroyed their home had been defeated. Justice was coming. But for those who had fought the war, there was no celebration. There was only exhaustion and the knowledge that the hard work was just beginning. Park stood on the observation deck of the transport ship that was carrying him back to the system. He watched the stars pass by in silence. He had survived the battle for Prime. He had fought in 3 more engagements after that. He had watched friends die and enemies fall. He had done things he never thought he would do. Now the war was over, but he did not feel victorious. He just felt tired. Shin found him there, staring at the stars. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. Did not answer for a long moment. Then he said, "I thought I would feel different. I thought winning would make it better. But it does not bring them back, does it? Minyu is still dead. The children are still dead. Nothing we did changes that." Stood beside him, looking at the same stars. "No," she said. "It does not change the past, but it protects the future. No one will ever attack a human settlement like that again. Because of what we did, millions of people will live in safety. Our children will grow up without fear." She paused. "That has to mean something." Closed his eyes. "For New Haven," he whispered. "For New Haven," agreed. And somewhere ahead of them, the sight of their destroyed home waited for them to return.